Today we're going to break down the story structure of Thor Ragnarok, using the Save the Cat beat sheet and Dan Harmon's story circle. We're also going to have a look at the central theme of the movie and how it's represented through the characters. And on top of that, we're going to have a look at the art of character introductions. All that and more to come, but first, did you notice the Chekhov's gun scene in this film? Chekhov's gun is a screenwriting technique that says that every element in the story should have a purpose in pushing the story forward. For example, if you put a gun on the wall in the first scene of the film, then by the last scene, someone had better have taken it down and used it. Now in Thor Ragnarok, Ragnarok itself is Chekhov's gun. In the first scene of the film, Surtur talks about how he wants to unleash Ragnarok.
Then you have seen Ragnarok, the fall of Asgard.
And at the end of the film, Ragnarok happens. A great use of Chekhov's gun. By the end of this video, you'll have a much better grasp on how Hollywood action films tell stories, introduce characters, and explore deeper themes. All good films start off with a logline, which is just a one-sentence summary of what the film is about. I reckon the logline for Thor Ragnarok might be something a bit like this. Thor must recruit some unlikely allies to save Asgard from Hela, the goddess of death. Now in Save the Cat, Blake Snyder also points out different genres of film, and I think this one classically falls into the superhero genre, in which an extraordinary person, Thor, the god of thunder, must live in an ordinary world and learn to be a good leader, a good friend, and a good brother. He's an extraordinary person in an ordinary world. Now let's break down Thor Ragnarok and put it into the Save the Cat beat sheet, which looks a bit like this. Feel free to pause the video here and have a quick look at the beat sheet before we get started. The opening image, we meet Thor, the god of thunder, and he's out to stop a bad guy, Surtur, from bringing about Ragnarok, the prophesied end of the Asgardian people. Then we have the theme stated. And in Thor Ragnarok, I think the theme is this question of what does it mean to be the king? Surtur mentions that without the king to protect Asgard, Asgard is vulnerable and he'll be able to enact Ragnarok.
Odin is not on Asgard, and your absence has left the throne defenseless.
Now, of course, this confuses Thor because Thor thinks that Odin is protecting the realm. Next is the setup. Thor returns to Asgard and reveals that Loki has been impersonating Odin the whole time. The two brothers meet Doctor Strange and go off to find Odin. And then we have the catalyst. Odin passes away, and Hela, the goddess of death, returns from her exile to conquer the realms and rule with an iron fist.
Kneel before your queen.
Then we have the debate. Thor thinks he can easily defeat Hela, but he's wrong and he loses his hammer. Then we have the break into Act 2, where Thor and Loki are cast out to Sakaar and Hela returns to Asgard. Next is the B story, where we introduce a new character. In this case, Thor is on Sakaar and he meets Valkyrie. Valkyrie is hiding from her past and has given up on following a king. Then we have the fun and games. Thor fights Hulk in the Tournament of Champions and realizes he has powers even without his hammer. Now we're at the midpoint. After some antics on Sakaar, Thor convinces Hulk, Valkyrie, and Loki to escape and help him to save Asgard. Next, the bad guys close in. The people of Asgard are out of places to hide and out of people to protect them. Heimdall has done his best, but it wasn't enough. We then get to the all is lost moment. Thor and his crew arrive, but they're taken down by Hela's forces. She seems to be overwhelmingly powerful, and there's nothing that Thor can do about it. Then we get the dark night of the soul. And this is that moment where Thor wrestles with the idea that he can't be as good of a king as his father. Thor has a vision in which he speaks to Odin, and Odin reminds him that he has the potential to be a great king, better than Odin ever was.
I'm not as strong as you.
No. You're stronger.
This leads to the break into 3, in which Thor with his newfound powers fights back against Hela. Then we cue the grand finale. Thor unleashes Ragnarok and Surtur kills Hela. Thor now knows that Asgard is not a place, it's a people. And he is not willing to send his people to their deaths fighting Hela, something that Valkyrie has taught him about how Odin failed. And so we reach the final image, where Asgard the place is destroyed, but Asgard the people remain on a spaceship, with Thor as their king. Okay, so that was the Save the Cat beat sheet. Now let's see how the story fits into Dan Harmon's story circle. So the story circle structure looks a bit like this. Feel free to again pause the screen and get the structure in your head before we begin. We begin in an ordinary world. Thor is a superhero protecting the realms from danger, but he wants something. He wants to remain a hero and not have to take up the mantle of king. He believes that to be a king would be boring and less fun than being a superhero. Thor enters an unfamiliar situation when Hela, the goddess of death, returns. Thor is banished to Sakaar and Hela lays claim to the throne, but Thor adapts to it. He meets Hulk and Valkyrie and leads an escape from Sakaar. Then Thor gets what he wants. He gets to be the hero that saves Asgard from Hela. But he pays a heavy price for it, Asgard is destroyed and it's all his fault.
What have I done?
He enters a new world where Asgard is this multicultural nation living on board a spaceship. And Thor has changed. He has now taken up the mantle of king and knows what it means to be a good king that protects his people. So that's Thor Ragnarok inside of the story circle beat sheet. Now we're going to take a look at the central theme of the movie and how that's explored by the characters. I believe that every good film has a question that it raises for us, the audience, something that could change the way we perceive our lives and live our lives in the world. I think the central question for this film is, what does it mean to be a king? And like all good stories, this question is what drives the conflict, and each character presents their own answer to this question to prompt us as the audience to think about what our answer is. For example, Hela believes that to be king means to rule with an iron fist, to conquer and be powerful. This comes into direct conflict with Thor's belief, which is to be a king means to serve and protect your people. And it's this conflict between the hero and the villain that carries the story forward. We also explore some different perspectives from Loki and Valkyrie. Loki believes that to be king means to receive glory and to indulge in pleasure. And in contrast, Valkyrie thinks that to be king means to lead people to meaningless deaths. So hopefully you can see that all the different characters have different answers to the central question of the movie. And the question remains for us as the audience: what do we think it means to be a king? The last thing to look at today is some character introductions. One of the theories in screenwriting is that you want to introduce a character when they are at their most characterful. In other words, when they are most themselves and most displaying their traits. And I think Thor Ragnarok does a very good job at this. For example, we meet Thor, the god of thunder, doing his thing, taking down bad guys, being a powerful superhero. When Hulk is introduced, he's introduced as this champion warrior, but we the audience can see through that. We understand that he just wants to be accepted by someone. And of course, we meet Loki when he is impersonating Odin, because he's a mischievous liar that just wants power and status. And we meet Valkyrie when she's at her most characterful. She's a drunk who's running from her past and is totally happy to hurt people for her personal gain. There you go, that is my breakdown of the story structure of Thor Ragnarok. Hope this helps you to tell better stories and to make your action films more impactful. Huge shout out to the writers of Thor Ragnarok, Eric Pearson, Craig Kyle, and Christopher L. Yost, and of course to the masterful Taika Waititi who directed the film and brought it to life. Let me know in the comments which film I should break down next so we can learn to tell better stories and to make better movies. See you next time.